would you invest in a startup that's innovating in the metaverse? So yes, of course I would. I think that there's a 20% chance, I would put it at, that VR and AR become a very significant, big part of our lives in the future. VR, I'm not so sure about. I think motion sickness, wearing the thing, blocking out the real world, it's going to work for some category of products really well, like educational or maybe casual gaming. And, we heard about golf works really well, maybe snowboarding, Beat Saber. There's like some physical activity. So I think education and working out and those kind of activities, quite fun. We'll see where it expands to. I think AR could become, like smartphones, an 80 or 90% adoption curve where people put on AR glasses in the real world. And when you look at a restaurant, if Yelp is your default or Zagat or Google Local or whoever's glasses you're using, Apple, it would tell you the hours of operation. This place closes in 21 minutes. It might tell you the wait time. It might tell you the specials. You're walking down the street, and if somebody is opted in to being in your network and is a friend of a friend, it might say right above their head, good friends with your friend, Evan. And you could stop the person. You say, hey, and they see on yours, good friends with Evan. And it does like a little halo, like you both know somebody, right? Pretty interesting. Let's say there's a version of Tinder or Bumble with AR glasses, and you go to an event and it says, hey, this person's into, this person is looking for a long-term relationship. This person is not looking for a long-term relationship. This person likes long walks on the beach and yoga. And this person likes, indie music and Kurosawa films, whatever it is. There's going to be some interesting AR applications that I think if you don't use them, you're going to be left out of society. Much like not having a phone today means you're left out of a lot of functions in society. Think about it. 15 years ago, you could go to a restaurant and not have to have a smartphone. Today, if you go to a restaurant post-pandemic, no smartphone, or at the, in the endemic phase of the pandemic, you go take out your smartphone to pay and order. I mean, I've been to some restaurants where, they're just like, that's the only way you can order. Or you're driving and you need a map. Like, let's say your car doesn't have navigation. It's an old car. You used to have to pull over and ask at a gas station for directions and write them down. Remember those days? You probably don't. Watching the show, half of you don't remember those days. But you used to stop and ask for directions. Or when you were on a road trip, you would get to a gas station, and in the front of the gas station, they would have the maps. And if you were going east, west, north, or south, they would have a row of maps for people going north, a row of maps for people going south, and you'd buy that. Or before you went, you would go to a bookstore and there was a map section, and you would buy the maps of the South, Alabama, Florida, wherever you're going. And when you moved to LA, there was a specific book that everybody would buy, and they would be on the floor boards of everybody's car in LA had those because LA was driving culture, right? So I think that's what AR is going to be in 20 years, where if you don't have AR glasses, you're missing like half of society. Just like people who, you're on your phone and you want to go to the movies. How are you going to look up movie times? You're going to go, you can't, I don't know, can you still call on the phone and get movie times? That's how we did it in the 80s. There were like, my parents would look in the newspaper at movie times. I remember in 1980s, if we're going to go see Raiders of the Lost Ark or, Superman, my dad would open up the newspaper. Then my dad would say, hey, can you call on the phone? So in the late 80s, you'd call on the phone, movie phone, you get the times. Then in the 90s, you would call on the phone and buy a ticket on movie phone. That took 10 minutes, but it was a lot better than going down and buying the tickets. So what you would do in the 80s and 90s is if there was a hot movie like Raiders of the Lost Ark, you would go on a Friday to buy tickets for Saturday or Sunday. You go on Thursday, and that's how you bought tickets. And literally, if you wanted to go to a sporting game or Bruce Springsteen was playing, when Bruce or Billy Joel would play, we would go to a Ticketmaster, which would be at a record store. So there were record stores to buy the records, and in the back, they'd have a Ticketmaster with a little computer. And you would see at 5 a.m, 100 people lined up to get in there for Bruce tickets. They would let us in at exactly 8 a.m. The person behind the counter would run 10 sets of tickets, give them to a scalper, Brooklyn style. And then they would let people in at 8:05, and you would just try to get tickets. And the first person might get second row, fifth row, and then the person in the end would get like the blues. So yeah, I would definitely invest in AR specifically. The problem is today, those AR glasses aren't even out except for the HoloLens. And those are thousands of dollars and for very specific applications. So you have to be very careful investing in companies for a platform that does not yet exist. VR exists. Some of those companies are now surviving, but the VR companies that got invested in 5 to 10 years ago when Oculus was first coming out, most of them went out of business. Now, most startups do go out of business, but a lot of them went out of business because they never made it to a point where you could make millions of dollars off of selling apps. And I think right now, there are some people like Beat Sabers and Rec Room that have 1 million users a month. If they have 100,000 of them paying, maybe they could start to hit break even, but it's still early days. So you want to be early enough that you can innovate and take market share, but you don't want to be so early that you run out of money before the platform arrives and users are ready to spend money. Great question.